So this is actually great for you guys to be here after the party, and we truly appreciate that you woke up. You probably know Naveen Jain, being a philanthropist. I just heard that he spoke yesterday. I am actually discovering. Last year he was talking about philanthropy. So this is what I would like to do in these 20 minutes. I would like you to, the philanthropist. I just want you to know the wonderful human being behind that successful entrepreneur, philanthropist, and human being, just a great dad. So, Naveen, tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get here? How did you actually, arrive to the point where you are?
Okay. From my side, as if you were to take a wild guess, I am from India. We grew up in India very, very poor. There are times we didn't have food to eat, and we moved from village to village to village. My father had a very decent job, actually. He was a civil engineer in the government, and his job was to build the buildings for the government. But since the society is so corrupt, the government being as smart as they are, they decided that why pay these people much, because they're going to take the bribe anyway. My dad, in his humble wisdom, decided that he wants to be an honest man. And as you can imagine, that means we had very, very little money. But that was actually not the problem, because human body is not designed to eat too much. Because when we eat too much, we all know what happens. We all start storing it, right? So that was never the problem about not having food to eat. What fundamental problem that we found in the society was that the way the bribe works is, the contractor would not build the building, do a shoddy job, save the money, give a little bit to the engineer. Engineer will take his piece, pass it on to his boss. His boss will take a bigger piece, pass it on to his boss. And it will keep going on up, all the way up. Every 6 months, his boss will start to wonder, why is the money not coming in? And he calls the contractor and say, hey, John, is that guy taking all the money? What's going on? He said, taking money? Do you know what he's asking me to do? What? He's asking me to build the building to the spec. Have you ever heard of that? And guess what? In government, you never get fired. You get transferred. Every 6 months, we moved from village to village to village until we went to the most remote villages where there was no building to be built because there is no bribe to be lost. So here I am. My dad, who is supposed to be building the building, can't build the building because nobody wants to give up their bribe. Most of my education was done in sitting in the schools where there were no tables, no chairs. We sat on the floor, wrote on the floor. My sister went on to do a postdoctorate in applied mathematics. My brother had a PhD in computer science and PhD in statistics. And I am the least educated person with engineering and MBA. And I went to the United States with $5 in my pocket, did not speak the language, did not know anyone. And God has been amazingly kind to us. And what I realized about 15, 20 years ago was that there were so many people in my life who helped me become who I am. Not only I can't remember who these people are, the worse, they don't need my help. So I made a decision, I'm going to go out and do my best to pay the debt back to the society by helping every single entrepreneur that I'll meet. And I'm going to go make them successful and hoping they will feel the same obligation going forward to help the next generation. And we're going to go out, find a way to impact millions and millions of people in their life.
Exactly. And so what is the mindset of abundance?
So mindset of abundance is really clear. You do not think that anything is not possible or anything is scarce. The reason we find things scarce is because we think that what is being done is the only way of doing things, right? So for example, 50 years ago, one of the rarest things was something called aluminum. It is plentiful, abundance on earth, but it's never in a pure form. It comes in the form of bauxite. It was extremely rare. Nobody could purify it until the technology came along called electrolysis. And then aluminum became abundant. We have the Coke cans we throw away. We use them for everything. It was simply people found them to be rare because they thought in a certain way. So when you start to think that everything that we value on earth is nothing but a tiny dot in the galaxy. There's nothing that we fight over that we can't have abundance of, whether it is the land, whether it is water, anything that you think, whether it's called rare earth elements, they are called rare earth elements. They are not called rare moon elements. They're not called rare Mars elements, right? Anything that you find valuable, scarce, can be had and plentiful. And you talk about education, you talk about healthcare. The reason they are scarce is because we continue to do the same things in the same way that has not changed and disrupted in the last 50 or 100 years.
So this is where the genius of Steffi comes in, because obviously I work for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. One organization, basically the war chest of these three diseases. I think I'm a smart ass. I think the organization is going to really eradicate these diseases. So I'm confronted yesterday in breakfast with this lovely man who says, like, NGOs should not exist. People should not give money to you. And I think you're doing all wrong because you're not thinking, like you're not solving the problem. I'm like, we're fighting AIDS. And you're actually telling me that actually the problem is that I'm not thinking in an entrepreneur way. So I read these articles about him, and I actually recommend you to go into Forbes, because this man is more prolific than anything that I've seen in the past. You're like the Rubens of the painters of this world, but in entrepreneurship and training people and generosity. So I go into this article about entrepreneurship entrepreneur philanthropist, where he's literally challenging philanthropy at the core. And so you're saying there, and you gotta love this guy. So he's like, I actually want you to explain to me what's entrepreneur philanthropy.
So the entrepreneur's perspective on philanthropy is really, really simple. First of all, giving money is not philanthropy. Philanthropy is not about giving money, it's about solving a problem. And when you start to solve a problem, you start to think about scale. So when an entrepreneur thinks about starting a company, what's the number one thing they think about? How big is my market? You don't go, or somebody were to tell you your market size is 100 people or 200 people, you say, oh my God, I don't want to start that. But guess what happens? So philanthropists do that all the time, because you know why they do that? It makes them feel good. I'm a generous man. I started a school in Congo. How many people were there? Well, there are 100 people in a village who are going to get education now. And you know why? Because I'm so generous, right? I'm going to start 10 schools, so I'm going to impact 1,000 people. Guess what? That's a tiny market. There are a billion people out there who need access to education. What if you're able to come up with a way of doing things, such as using the tablet devices, which are pricing now at $25, going down to $10, and going down to free? If you can take a tablet device and make that device so effective that it is better than a private tutor and it's more effective, more addictive than a video game, you have fundamentally changed education. The reason the education system is not disrupted is because it was designed, think about it, how ripe it is for disruption. So the fundamental problem, let's go back to the entrepreneurship. As an entrepreneur, the number one thing you do is define the problem correctly. If you define the problem in one way, your solution is very limited. So if you were to come up with a problem that says, education system is broken, what would you do? You want to fix it. What if I told you that education system is not broken, but it is obsolete? The answer is different. I want to reinvent it. It is no longer works the way the society had changed. So think about what happened. We designed the education system for the industrial era, where we wanted the plug-and-play people. And just like the manufacturing process, our education system works exactly like a manufacturing process. Many of you have never seen the assembly line. So let me tell you how it works. You take the raw material of the similar size, and you move them from station to station. On each station, you do a little bit of work. At the end of assembly line, you do a pass-fail. You know what we do with our children? We start with the children who are of the same, based on their date of manufacturing. 6-year-old go here, 7-year-old go here, 8-year-old go here. And then you move them from station to station. Math, science, and you, at the end of the assembly line, pass, fail. You know what's happening? With the exponential technology, everything that you're learning is becoming obsolete every 5 to 10 years. When things are becoming obsolete in your lifetime, What do you have to do? You have to teach them differently. Teach them learning to learn, understanding that it's collaborative, understanding that each person learns differently. So what if you can make an education system that's adaptive, that's personalized, that's gamified, that's collaborative, and accessible to everyone? That is fundamentally changes the game. You talk about healthcare. Why do we need the doctors? Why do we need the hospitals? Why does it need to be infrastructure-based? What if you can develop the sensors that are microfluidic sensors or semiconductors that are able to diagnose the most common diseases better than the doctor? And the doctors can now go do what they do best. Think about the rare stuff, not about the common stuff. Same type of thing. The clean water. What if you can apply the nanotechnology to essentially filter the water? What if you can apply the synthetic biology? What if you can reprogram your own human body to be able to do what you want it to do? So you can tell your body, not only you had a big lunch, you're going to even have a bigger dinner. And by the way, save the room for a pecan pie. And by the way, I'm going to have a bottle of wine at the same time. Don't store it, because next day, I'm going to do exactly the same. So don't worry about it, right? And there's no reason you can do that. The reason we don't do that is because we can't imagine, we can't dream. We have taken away the people's power to dream and people's power to imagine. And when you take that away, you make people slaves, right? And the reason innovation does not happen, because people don't dream and people don't imagine. You know where the imagination used to come from? Science fiction. Everything that we saw science fiction, today is becoming a science reality. Things we used to talk about, how Dr. Spock is able to diagnose using tricorder. Guess what? We're building tricorder devices. People talk about teleportation. Not only we are sequencing the DNA, we are synthesizing the DNA. So you can sequence it on one side and print it on the other side. That's teleporting life. You can now teleport a virus, vaccine, and life. It's only a matter of time till we actually teleport human beings, right? Today, you're able to almost do that. You can sequence a sperm on one side, email the sperm on the other side, and somebody can synthesize the sperm and use it. So, honey, I was not in town, does not work anymore. Right?
So you can see that by now, after a day of talking together, I'm almost getting warm to the idea of, yeah, you actually, for philanthropy, you could add some entrepreneurship. So I go there, and I'm like, well, listen, in my world, I've been working in humanitarian affairs for 15 years. I can see the philanthropist everywhere. I just don't see half of my organization having a thing. You know, like half of my organization really are not entrepreneurs. You know what his answer is? Let me go and talk to them. So you are challenging, this is a guy that is never gonna give up. He dreams big, he wants big, but also, so talking of that, you want to make a difference in the world.
Yes.
But you're actually doing a lot of efforts to go to the moon.
Yes.
How is that going to work? How is that going to help solving the problems in the planet?
So think about it. Why would a poor immigrant ever dream of a moon? You know why? Because it's audacious. It is inspiring. And my thought was, if a child who had no food to eat can dream and can go to the moon, that will inspire every single human being in the world to say, what can I do? If that kid with 25 people can go land on the moon and make history, why can't I make history of my own? Whatever my dream is, whatever my inspiration is, I'm going to think so big. When I tell people what you're doing, they say, you are goddamn crazy. And unless people call you crazy, you're not thinking big. So think so big. When you go out and tell the immigration officer, what do? Like I did in UK, I say, I'm going to mine the moon, sir. He said, that's a crazy talk, son. That does not work in this country. And I'm going to deny your visa if you keep talking crazy like that, because we don't allow crazies in this country. And I told them, sir, next time when you want to go honeymoon on the moon, give me a call. Here's my business card.
You were talking yesterday about something quite interesting. Well, we've been talking about this. So tell me about like authentic and vision. Like we were talking about the power of conferences and getting people together and how grateful we are actually about this explosive connection that we made. Yeah. So what is it that you find interesting in a conference? Like how do you, let's talk about authenticity, vulnerability, and being actually who you are in a place like this.
So I think in a lot of the times, and this is just, it's totally off the topic, but people come to the conferences with agenda. They have a hidden agenda. They want to get something done. They want to be politically correct. They cannot be themselves. And they are told, never be vulnerable. Imagine what? You do not build the deep relationship with a person unless you can be vulnerable. Unless you can share your emotional connection with a person, you can never build deep connection. People measure their success when they leave the conference, how many business cards they gave and how many business cards they collected. Guess what? If you ever think you have more than 5 people that you met in the conference that you think you have a friendship with, you have friendship with no one. You have to spend time. You have to connect with people. You have to give yourself to them. And you have to let your heart in their hand and say, I trust you. And when you do that, that is the time you build a deep relationship. When you leave this conference, they become your lifelong friends. So make 1, 2, 3, or 4 those lifelong friends when you go to a conference. Find a like-minded person who is going out, going to go make the change, who is going to go out on a journey with you to go out and change the world. And that's how you do it.
And so yesterday I had the honor to go with you along. He did a number of things, going to incubators, talking actually to young entrepreneurs. And I found that you said your biggest achievement in life. Why don't we share with us what is your biggest achievement in life so far?
So my biggest achievement in life is not about starting as many companies I have done. My biggest accomplishment I look at is simply our children. I have 3 children, and you're going to hear from one of them in an hour, who is a great entrepreneur who is launching the company that you'll be announcing today, Naveen Jain. Amazing entrepreneur. He started a college entrepreneurship thing called Cairo Society when he was 17. And as bright as he is, his sister, who is 19 years old now, is giving a run for his money. She is at Stanford, as a Stanford Fellow. She's on the board of Stanford Women at Business. She's a youth champion for United Nations Foundation. And she cares about the girls' education. Our youngest is 16, who just did his first TED Talk at United Nations. Now imagine, these children are what warms your heart. So she asked me, what if I were to ask you how much money will you leave when you die, what would you want? And I said, if God could give me a promise that He will absolutely guarantee that my children are going to be happy, they're going to be wise, they're going to be healthy. You know what? I will give up everything I have. But God, if you're listening, send me the 3 originals. And make sure they're notarized, because I'm counting on it. It's not a little bit of money, it's a lot of money.
Good for them. So last question. So talking about abundance, what are the 3 things, what are the key learnings or like your words of wisdom to this audience about abundance? How shall we think of it?
So first of all, think differently. It's not about thinking outside the box. It's about thinking in a different box. If you become an expert in your field, you become absolutely useless in your field, because the day you become an expert, you become incrementalist. You think about incremental evolution. So if you want to disrupt something, go out in a completely different industry that you know nothing about, because then you're thinking in abstract. So never be afraid to talk about your problem to someone who knows nothing about your industry, because they will come up with the ways that you have never thought before. Number 2, is that never afraid to share and never be afraid to fail. Most people think somehow the idea is their idea, and if they share the idea, somebody else will do it. If only thing you're worried about is the idea, you have nothing. You, as an entrepreneur, you win by execution. It's all about execution, execution, execution. You want ideas? Talk to a cab driver, he'll give you 2 of them. Right? Everyone has ideas. Number 3 thing is that never be afraid to fail. Entrepreneurs never fail. Their ideas may or may not work. And you know what entrepreneurs do? They pivot, right? Pivot is a way of saying, I have found a stepping stone to even bigger success. So the way you do that is always never let the ideas that has not worked become the failure of a person. You as a person becomes better every time. And the more have you failed, the more arrows you have back. So after the third time, you can go to anyone and say, sir, I am the right CEO because I know exactly what not to do 3 times over.
That's wonderful. Naveen Jain, it's such a pleasure meeting you. Fearless, play hard, go hard, fixer, dream bigger. Thank you so much.